There's something about modern life that many of us have noticed but rarely discuss. It's this: at some point over the last 2 decades, we've allowed existence to become performance. Obviously, I don't mean in the theatrical sense, we're not all suddenly actors and singers, but in the sense that much of what we do in our free time is no longer just for us. It's now raw material, content that can, and therefore we think should, be posted online. This video is about that phenomenon and what it's costing us. Because while uploading elements of our lives to social media may seem harmless enough, living life inside a landscape of continual judgment is far from harmless. In fact, I think it's one of the more damaging aspects of modern life. Until the early part of the 20th century, life for almost everyone was comparatively very private. People did things because they needed to and made things because they wanted to. They sang because they felt like singing and wrote because they had something on their mind. They baked, drew, crafted, sewed, stitched and assembled for themselves or for a friend or family member. There was no public record, no digital archive, and importantly, no wider audience. Then mass media arrived and created something new, the possibility of fame and notoriety. Television, cinema, radio, and global music distribution fundamentally changed the cultural landscape. In theory, anyone could now become a household name, a celebrity. Technology had made possible for the everyday person what was once reserved for the privileged. And celebrities could earn extraordinary sums of money while being adored and recognised by strangers in the process. Despite the fact that the chances of becoming a celebrity were vanishingly small, the notion of celebrity entered the cultural bloodstream, and a desire for public recognition and adoration was born. Later in the 21st century, social media arrived, and in just a couple of decades, everything changed. Social media didn't just allow for wider recognition, it made it relatively easy to achieve. It handed everyone a camera and said, you too can be broadcast. Anyone can now gain attention for pretty much anything they do. And as a result, visibility became normalized, and slowly, without most of us noticing, the baseline shifted. First, posting about ourselves became normal, then it became expected, and now for many people, it's non-negotiable. Broadcasting our lives into the public arena has shifted from possibility to obligation. That's because social media has created the illusion that if we don't post everything we do online, we're somehow not fully experiencing life, which is of course complete. But the degree to which society has embraced social media makes it feel like that's true. It's important to realise that the design of these platforms has constructed that illusion. Gamified feedback loops, constant notifications, visible metrics, and of course algorithms have shaped our behaviour. Behavioural change was never the intention. The goal has always been to maximise revenue for social media platforms. But regardless of that, it's resulted in behavioural change at scale. We were coaxed gently at first, then encouraged, and now we're pressured to turn our lives into media streams in exchange for social validation. And in doing so, we've become unpaid workers in a system built to monetize our attention for big tech. Today, hundreds of millions of people choose to spend their free time broadcasting curated extracts of their personal lives for recognition that they exist in a world that's been engineered from the ground up to equate existence with visibility. I'm making this video today because I believe something essential has been lost by turning our lives into a performance. Not acts of creativity and expression, those are more prevalent than they've ever been in the digital space. But private creativity, experiences and expression, the joy of doing something that no one else sees. The almost imperceptible satisfaction of making a mistake that doesn't need editing. The freedom to create without the need to present it to an audience. Because when we constantly produce material for public display, the way we live becomes more controlled and less intimate. When there's always a pressure to share what we do, we naturally edit and adjust how we live. We optimize our behavior and regulate our activities, our actions, and ourselves. The truth is that everybody performs differently when they know that they're on display. And in response, our nervous systems recalibrate to cope with a world where visibility hovers constantly in the background. Even imagined judgment changes behavior. We've learnt to preempt audience responses to the things we do. And so, intentionally choosing offline expression and creativity immediately removes many of the pressures social media has created. It instantly returns us to a place of private psychological safety. When you write something down on paper, knowing it will never be posted, the way you think changes. You curate yourself less and become more honest. When you play an instrument in a room with no camera, you instinctively play differently. It doesn't matter if you make a mistake. When you sketch knowing you won't upload it, you allow imperfection to exist without the fear of judgment. In my view, none of this is trivial. Private expression is necessary for contentment because it provides true autonomy and connects us with our deeper personal motivations. Plus, it reminds us of the importance of doing something just because it feels right instead of doing something to upload fresh content to our socials. But importantly, and I really can't overstate how important this is in my mind, it pushes back against the invisible algorithms that quietly monetize our personal lives. To be clear, this isn't in any way an argument against technology. I use technology a lot, including, obviously, social media. I have, after all, posted this video on YouTube. Social media is not the enemy, and the internet itself has become an essential part of life. But these things should exist as a room in our houses and not be the house itself. The problem arises when digital visibility becomes the default context for our existence. When every meal, every walk, and every thought is viewed as potential content. When socializing starts to feel like some kind of brand management. And when we curate experiences in anticipation of posting them rather than enjoying the moment. Doing that can only ever raise anxiety levels quietly and subconsciously. It introduces comparison into moments that should just be experienced and turns leisure into work. We have become performers in a system that does not adequately compensate us. And look, I'm not sitting here preaching to you as someone who hasn't shared moments of my life on social media. I posted stuff like that for years, meals I'd had, places I'd been, and things that I'd bought. But then I realized it was taking more out of me than I was getting out of it. A post lasts a day. A moment of your life is miles down the feed by the end of the week. But deliberate offline expressions are different. A handwritten journal, for example, can last for decades. And because it's physical, it's just inherently different. And a memory formed without the distraction of a camera sinks into our minds much more deeply. A physical object will likely outlive any platform you post it on. In an age of infinite digital content, unrecorded experiences have become rare. And rare things have value. And let me say this, the act of doing something purely offline is not regression, it's recalibration. It deliberately reroutes the feedback loop back to ourselves. It's a return to direct experience and personal enjoyment. So why not write a page that no one else will ever read? Learn a piece of music and never perform it in front of anyone. Cook something from scratch and don't photograph it. Take a walk without telling an audience about it. Build anything small and imperfect and leave it unshared. Then notice how different it feels. Notice the absence of self-optimization and notice the reduction in internal commentary. There's an unexpected relaxation that comes from knowing that you're not being measured, knowing that there isn't a scoreboard or any like count to check. And perhaps most importantly, immerse yourself in the limitless freedom there'll be to fail. Because when everything is public, failure is amplified. Offline mistakes simply exist for us and us alone. They don't require explanation or any type of defense. It's freeing. As we move further into an era that will be shaped by artificial intelligence and algorithmic curation, the importance of offline expression will only increase. Machines will generate more content than we can ever consume. Engagement loops will become more refined, and the digital layer of the reality we exist in will steadily expand. What becomes scarce in that environment isn't information, that's abundant. It's untracked life. Moments that aren't data points, acts that aren't monetized, and experiences that don't end up being archived on a server. Choosing not to share aspects of your life with an audience isn't quaint, old-fashioned, or unsociable. It's completely natural and healthy in ways we've forgotten to appreciate. It also signals that you refuse to allow every part of your existence to be absorbed into a system you're not in control of. It's a long overdue reminder that you're not just a data point in an ever-expanding network of attention, you're a person. Fortunately, this doesn't require any grand gestures. You don't need to delete accounts or announce a dramatic departure from Instagram. It can be quiet and personal. In fact, that's exactly the way it should be. Because the point isn't to turn offline living into some kind of visible lifestyle choice, or to create a new trend of curated disconnection. Doing that would be heading straight back into performance. The point is to rediscover what it feels like to do something that doesn't need to be seen to matter. To sit with your own thoughts without broadcasting them. There's a deep satisfaction in that. It makes us feel something fundamental. Instead of chasing the paper-thin validation of an online audience, we get to feel an internal recognition that we're participating in our own lives. In a world that increasingly forces us outward, offline expression turns us inward instead. It's not a rejection of modernity, it's a search for balance. We can use platforms without becoming platforms ourselves and share without converting every experience into media. We can create for others and still preserve a space that's just for us. And I think that space will become one of the most important things we need to defend in the years ahead. So here's an invitation. Choose one thing this week that you will do completely offline. Not secretly as a performance of secrecy, but genuinely, with no intention of sharing it. Buy a notebook and create your first journal page. Play music that no one's ever going to hear. Draw something on a scrap of paper and place it in a drawer, or throw it in the bin, burn it, or bury it in the garden. It doesn't matter. The point is, the goal isn't the outcome. It's the experience of doing it. Because in a landscape that expects you to be on display, there's real power in choosing to do things that remain unseen. We desperately need to rediscover what it feels like to live life away from the public eye. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the future. This video was based on my writing over at layeredfuture.com. If you'd like to explore the full article or browse through other topics, you'll find it all there.